All right, music fans, welcome back. Harmless Dave here, talking about real music and doing it in real time for a few real people out there, just like you and just like me. So, the classic rock world, they're chatting a little bit about this interview that Jonathan Cain did with WOUB. I'm covering it yet again because they're talking about the album Frontiers, right? And John is saying, hey, I've got a few regrets about it. I wish there were fewer songs. By the way, I found out about a song because I read this article, a song that isn't on this album that is absolutely a killer track that should have been included. The song is called Hard to Let It Go, and it was only available on the Japanese edition. It was a bonus track that Jonathan Cain had written all by himself, and it's a really good song. And there were a few clunkers for Journey fans on this record. I tried to defend some of it when it came out, but in hindsight, there were just a couple of songs on this that really didn't fit. Now, some of it, if you go back, and I think Neil Sean probably thinks, hey, there may be a couple of folks that want some of that pre Steve Perry stuff, those first three albums. And for the most part, those people don't exist. I'm just saying. When Don't Stop Believin' is like the song, right? Everybody has acknowledged, greatest song ever written or whatever. That may or may not be true, but it is like most played, most downloaded here in the United States. So the band is going to be living forever off of that. So when they decided to release this album, the critics, they were kind of lukewarm to it, and people at radio stations were kind of mocking it a little bit. Like, okay, they've got a song that sounds like Separate Ways a little bit. The tempo is completely different. The beginning, even though it's got a keyboard sound, it's still, it's derivative. People use that term a lot. It's derivative, but it's not the same thing. I mean, Journey is plagiarizing Journey. And so, as Paul McCartney would say, what's wrong with that? I'd like to know. It just, I don't understand why people were so harsh about this. But Cain, I think, fills in some of the blanks here. He talks about COVID. I don't think the band was in a really good place when they made this record. I know Neil Sean was really gung ho about this album, and he and Narada Michael Walden had been working together prior to that. Neil had put out a solo album with the help of Narada, who is a brilliant guy, brilliant producer, worked with people like Whitney Houston years ago. But there was something missing, I would say, in the production of this record, and I've made that perfectly clear. But there's a lot of great material on here, and I'll be honest, even with maybe the production not being 100%, if you had the support of the industry, which is beating to death a number of your songs from the past, if you had that support, then this probably would have went somewhere. All right. Instead of just kind of languishing. I don't know how many copies this sold worldwide. It was BMG distribution here in the United States and Frontiers Music overseas. And Cain did complain that the record label just didn't do enough to promote this and get it out there. And I do agree with that. The initial single, by the way, which was called The Way We Used to Be, which was talking about the lockdowns and how masking wasn't a lot of fun. It didn't make those things plain in the song, but it was basically saying we wanted to get back to the way things used to be, right? Which was a decent sentiment to put out at the time, but a lot of people rejected that. A lot of people were embracing the new normal. And so that song was kind of rebellious, even though maybe it wasn't intended to be rebellious. You could look at it in romantic terms. Our relationship should go back to the way it used to be. But anyway, I thought that song was a little different for the band as far as, does this sound like Journey? It kind of does, but it's kind of a crunchy song and has kind of a weird riff to it. It's a good song, but it isn't a classic Journey sounding song. And I think the band would have went a lot further if their first single was more derivative of stuff from, say, Frontiers or Escape or Raised on Radio. And there are tracks on here, including this new song that I had just learned about called Hard to Let It Go, that are better representations of what Journey would be most of the time. Having obviously Narada Michael Walden there and Randy Jackson, who I thought was going to be in Journey again, which would have been really cool, but apparently he decided against it. And also, Randy is an interesting character. Randy apparently wasn't down with the Safe and Effective product. I'd love to talk to him. Of course, he was on American Idol for a number of years, and he's the guy that Steve Perry brought in along with a new drummer, Larry London, for the Raised on Radio era. So anyway, he's a super good bass player and apparently a decent singer. And I think he also writes some pretty decent songs as well. So he was kind of in there, I think, as a catalyst and also as someone who could kind of link the past and the present together. The band had just lost Ross Valerie again, and here comes Randy Jackson to step in for Ross Valerie yet again. The album should have done better, and it could still do well if you had a company out there to market. It's only 2 years since it came out. You could do a remastered version of it, a remixed version of it with different songs. You could reorder the songs. You could omit some songs. You could put in this Japanese only track, which I think is really good. And for Journey fans, maybe they just don't care at this point. And that's, I think, part of what the industry is doing to a lot of these bands that continue to try to put out new material and nobody cares. That's why we've got Modern Retro Radio over there doing what they do, because they'll play new material by classic bands like this. They'll put it out there and they'll let the people decide. They won't just say, no, they're not going to like this, and we're just going to block this from getting out there. And there's so many other things now that people have moved on to. Well, you keep milking Don't Stop Believin' and Open Arms and Who's Crying Now. You keep beating these songs into the ground that we've heard 80 million times, and you got some new material here. And I think fans would have gotten into it if you had given it the proper amount of attention. So yeah, that's just my theory on it. I think Cain is right in his assessment, but I also think that the industry itself, they're not cheerleading this. They have no reason to. They'll use all of the old stuff to keep their ratings, through the roof on these radio stations that, quite honestly, are boring. They're all the same. Imagine being able to pipe in the same music all across the country, and people are okay with that. People don't seem to really care that the playlists are boring. There are no radio personalities anymore to front sell, back sell, do anything like the old days. People don't want DJs. They want commercials and public service announcements and weather forecasts. And I guess that's it, right? My job, that's why, if there was a real demand for radio DJs and they paid money, maybe I would consider doing it again. I don't know, but there's no money in it and they don't need them. It's all automated. I could just phone it in from the house too, like most of these people do. Do you think Alan Hunter is in a studio somewhere? No. He's probably in a bedroom somewhere, either recording what he's going to say in advance, or if it is live, which I doubt it is, he can just do it from the comfort of his own home and say what he wants to say, and someone else is probably producing the whole thing. I don't know. I'd want to be the hands-on DJ. I want to press the buttons, right? In the old days, queue up those records or put in those carts, but not anymore. So anyway, here's Journey and Freedom. Just give this a listen to. You probably will have a few favorite songs on this, and then you'll probably be like, okay, Dave said to go listen to this again, and I still don't like some of those songs. And Arnell is never going to be Steve Perry, blah, blah, blah. But I think, as Jonathan Cain said, you'll find a lot more on this that you like than you dislike, which means, yeah, just cull it down to maybe 11 songs, 12 songs at the most, and pick the best songs that you have and reorder it. And I'd get somebody in there to remaster it too, because there's something weird about this. It sounds very flat, very mono, and I'm pretty sure they could do something to kind of tweak this and give it a more full-bodied sound. All right, people, thanks for watching this video. God bless everyone. Please pray for peace in the Middle East and around the world and in your own heart. And I will be back. See you then.